the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Thandi Modise, the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Thandi, and the Deputy Chair of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Tau. We also have our presiding officers, Mr. Frolic, and the Chairperson, yes, Chair of House Chairs. Okay. We also have in attendance the Secretary to Parliament. My name is Baby Gyawa, Deputy Secretary to Parliament. I will be coordinating this forum. The Deputy Speaker says I must explain that our spokesperson is not well today, so he has delegated upwards. At this point in time, we'll invite the Speaker and, of course, the Chairperson to address the members of the media. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Because there are a number of points we would like to put forward in as clear a way as possible, I will go through this summary of the press statement, but because we thought the press statement itself was too long. So we will circulate it so that you can read it at your own pace. Summary of press statement, events of last Thursday. We have to make the general point that the events of last Thursday were most disturbing. And that is even though we knew we had been made, aware of the threats, which I will now get into. The threats before and after Sona. The economic freedom fighters made it known that they were going to disrupt the event of Sona by blatantly disregarding the rules, conventions, and practices of Parliament. Secondly, the concerns that had been raised by the EFF quite early in January were addressed in the Program Committee of the National Assembly. Thirdly, one EFF member has proudly boasted in a radio interview that they beat up security personnel, in particular with their makarapas. Another member has reportedly even threatened to bring weapons into the chamber. I get to the next point. The only point we want to make here is that members are expected to behave honorably. And we want to also make the point that a minority, a small number of members are involved in this non-honorable behavior. We get to the point about the removal of members from the chamber. EFF members were asked to leave the chamber after they openly defied the chair. And there's something I want to explain here because it's among things that have been coming up in the public domain, and that is that only 3 of them were mentioned by name. But we want to also remind ourselves that there came a point when they were all on their feet. So the issue of names being mentioned or not becomes irrelevant when the whole group are on their feet. Comprehensive rulings were given. The Sergeant at Arms and the Usher of the Black Rod were asked to assist for the members to leave the chamber after they refused. When this intervention failed, the Speaker called for the assistance of the Parliamentary Protection Services, and in terms of Section 7F of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act 4 of 2004, shortly referred to as Powers and Privileges Act, a person may not fail or refuse to comply with an instruction by a duly authorized staff member regarding the presence of persons at a particular meeting in the precincts. Water bottles and makarapas were thrown at Parliament's protection officers. It was at this point that the Speaker ordered the assistance of the security services. Section 199 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996, known as the Constitution, provides for the establishment, structuring, and conduct of security services. The security services of the Republic consist of a single defense force, a single police service, and any intelligence services established in terms of the Constitution. And of course, the action, as I've already indicated, was taken in terms of Section 4 of the Powers and Privileges Act. I come to the issue that is of great interest to a lot of members that are in this press conference, the issue of the scrambling of the signal and faulty microphones. Parliament does not own any device that scrambles communication or cellular phones. We did not order the use of such devices. We are to improve our systems in order for us to ensure that this does not become a precedent. The podium microphone locked, and up to now, the investigation is inconclusive. A backup system will be put in place. On the scrambling issue, one issue I want to make very, very emphatically clear is the media, as far as Parliament was concerned, was never a target or an issue in relation to the preparations for the State of the Nation address. Although we are not the organ that has the expertise or that will give to you the detail on this matter, we are aware that those concerned will issue a report to Parliament, and they will also address the media themselves about the detail of what was this all about. But I repeat, the media was never a target in relation to this matter as far as Parliament is concerned. Because for us, whatever communication that is within the law, the policy, and the rules has to be expedited, for the simple reason that without proper communication from those that have that expertise, there's no point in us saying we're going to have meetings that must then also be relayed to our people. I come to the role and powers of presiding officers. Duties of presiding officers include maintaining order, interpreting, applying, and ensuring compliance with the rules and practices of the House. Of course, that supposes that presiding officers always look forward to the smooth conduct of proceedings. Our last 2 points, we wish to say a democracy like ours means we must accept the will of the people. We say this because our experience of the less than a year of the 5th Parliament is that we have seen conduct that clearly displays an attitude that the outcome of the elections is not being respected. Everything is being done every step of the way to challenge it. And we remember that quite early in the life of this 5th Parliament, we started to hear comments, statements in the public domain from people who had taken the oath along with everybody else in this Parliament, saying they were not going to play by the rules. After having taken the oath, after having signed commitments in relation to that, they said they are not going to respect or cooperate with the rules and protocols of Parliament. We believe that all honorable members and parties must cooperate and tolerate each other. We must all respect our institutions, especially also beyond Parliament, all the 3 arms of the state. As a way forward, we, as the leadership of this Parliament, intend meeting with all political parties, a process we had started. In fact, we had a lunch, all of us, together on Wednesday, which was the day before Sona. We continue to proceed, we will continue to proceed in this tone of relating. We will continue also with engagements with the media community. We will initiate a dialogue with the MPs on our electoral system because the issue has come up. If I may perhaps elaborate a bit on this. The issue has come up whether the Speaker, because she's also a political deployee, although I don't understand what this means because all members of Parliament come from political parties. If we want to change our system, whereby a proposal has been made based on other systems elsewhere in the world, that issue has to be tabled for discussion and it must be engaged properly. It's not something that, midstream, midway, we meet in the passage and we say we don't think this thing works because we don't like a particular face that is occupying the seat. So we suggest that that issue, like any other issue, must be open for discussion. And we should arrive at an agreement or lack of agreement, and we say we move on this basis. But that we will just be hijacked on the way and told this is not how it should be because we don't feel like it. We will not accept that. We also intend utilizing the Speakers Forum for engagement on a whole range of the matters that have come up, some which we have raised in our own brief statement, but also which have been raised in the public domain before and after Sona. Madam Deputy Secretary, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Speaker. At this point in time, we will ask for questions, and then we'll take a sequence of questions. I would limit it to roughly 4 at a time. That will help. I'll start with you, Yan. Hold on. Deputy Speaker wants to advise on something. Yan, you're the first, and then Thabo.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Then I'll identify the rest as we come.
I have 3 quick ones. The first, and all of them arise from your statement, Madam Speaker. The first is that you said that the EFF, before the State of the Nation address, said that they would disregard the rules of Parliament. Could you list when the EFF said that? Because as I recall, they said the exact opposite. Secondly, you said that you had not ordered the signal scrambler. The question is rather whether you were aware of it. Were you at any time consulted about its installation? And thirdly, you said that people did not respect the rules of Parliament. Did you do so when these people were thrown out, especially given that for the first time since 1910, we are in a position where the minutes of Parliament are going to be challenged because of how they were put?
Please say your media house. Introduce yourself for record purposes.
I'm with the Sunday Times.
Thank you. My name is Thabo Mugoni, also with the Sunday Times. On the scrambling issue, Madam Speaker, you say Parliament doesn't own the device. Where did it come from? And also on an issue that's not in your statement, the comments you made in the Northwest over the weekend, likening Mr. Malema to a cockroach. What do you say to the backlash that has flowed from that? Is it a comment you regret, or do you stand by it? Thank you.
All right, can we take 2 more questions? The gentleman over there, and yeah.
Mike Cohen from Bloomberg News. When speaking in your introductory remarks, you said that the issue of the fact that you'd identified 3 people to sit down, it was irrelevant that you then ordered the security forces to evict the entire contingent of the EFF. Could you point us to the rule in Parliament or in the parliamentary rules that enables you to remove an entire party based on the actions of 3 members? Thanks.
Right. From there, can I take Paula? I'll take Paula first. Then I'm going to start from that extreme so that we balance. That's the 4th one this round.
Paula Charles, ENCA. My first question is, why were police officers used to eject members of the EFF dressed like waiters? If they are police members, are they not supposed to be in uniform with their badges shown? Secondly, if Parliament did not know about the signal jamming, did not order the device. Does this not speak to a fundamental problem of the separation of powers, where Parliament should be overseeing all of the security measures of this area as a separate arm of the state? And if the executive is involved in this, is this not a fundamental problem? And then just to connect it to Tabo's question, calling a member of Parliament a cockroach over a house that you preside over as a presiding officer that is supposed to be unbiased, does this not show bias, even if you were not at this event under your role as a speaker, but rather an ANC member? Can you please explain how that comment may be fair?
Back to the POs. I'd like the POs to address those questions, and then we'll take another round. And, of course, the Secretary will also respond to any matters referred to. Go. You're going to start.
I'm sure members of the media have access to the Powers and Privileges Act that specifically speaks about people defying the authority of the presiding officers and being disruptive in the House. That empowers the presiding officers, firstly, not only to ask them to leave, but to desist, and if they don't, and prevent duly authorized members from carrying out their responsibility, they themselves become as guilty as those who were named already. So the powers and privileges is very explicit in the disruptive nature of activities. We can interpret that if the Sergeant-at-Arms and the protection services attempt to carry out their responsibility, members surround such people ostensibly to prevent those from doing so because they explicitly said, we're going nowhere. That's disrupting the work. And so that the presiding officers are empowered to act in the manner in which that happened in the House. The police, in that specific legislation, how they dress is their operational business. The presiding officers cannot themselves decide how you must be dressed and so on. The protection services, which works with the police at all times and so on, become sensitive to carrying out their work in the best possible manner without disrupting the work of Parliament. So they make those decisions themselves. Whilst politically we know and we work together because the Sona is the one place where the three arms of the state come together. Even if the judiciary comes there as our guests, their presence requires of us, the executive and Parliament, to ensure, including for all the guests who come from both locally and elsewhere, that we cooperate. In fact, the Constitution says cooperative government is the requirement of the three arms of the state across the board. So that cooperation is what you saw on that day, every year. Whenever there's an annual Sona, there is always a week of preparation during which they do not only practice singing, the jazz band of the Navy, the marching in parading and the army and so on. This is what gets done every year. They exercise in and outside of the house in order that the performance they carry out on the day is the best, including for protective purposes. Now, members of the media, the legislature in Gauteng was invaded by people who said that, who created a huge chaos at that legislation. In the media, they said, we want this Sona to be worse than that. This is in the media. Now, all we are saying is that those things constitute matters we expect those who are responsible for the security and protection of members of Parliament here to take on board. So the actions which they take, if it is consistent with doing that work, is an appropriate one. So we are just saying that we should not underestimate the negative consequences of disruption. What is this disruption about? Is it about preventing legitimate debate? Is it about preventing accountability? No. What this is about is that when things are done in the House, it's a collective responsibility by all political parties. We can't have any single member or political party to decide that the debates, the subject of those debates must happen when it wants, at a time it chooses when that must happen, and completely reject in the House the rulings of the presiding officers. Let us also say that these things about not complying with the rules and so on, of course were said in the House as well, so that they were not hidden. It was not a secret that disruption or disobeying of the rulings of the presiding officers is going to be handled. There are structures in Parliament in case members feel displeased about the judgments, the rulings of the presiding officers, so that those matters can be addressed and corrected. You do not on the day literally prevent every other business of the day in order for you to be pleased and satisfied with the outcome of a question that you asked that was answered or not answered because you want it that way. No. This is a democracy, ladies and gentlemen. Surely we would like to see the outcome of the debate taking place as begins today, so that these matters are programmed in advance in correspondence with the party consent. The Speaker made it clear. Arrangements are already underway. We are bringing these things to happen when this must happen and so on. So we expect and hope that you will abide by those rulings. Those were completely ignored. So literally what it means is that, and we said this in advance of the State of the Nation address, that the authority of the chair is important. Even if you think they are biased, there are structures in Parliament, ahead of Parliament, or ahead of the occasion, and after the occasion to take up those issues. But it cannot be correct that the public is denied the opportunity to hear the proceedings inside the House in ways that are disruptive and in ways that were not made secret. So we take exception to the proceedings of the institutions being disrupted for what is patently undemocratic. We feel it is undemocratic to demand to have your way, whatever the way. Because the state, not only was this approach to the Sona, which is not the first time, for the last 20 years, this is how it has happened. It is for the first time that we have such an instance where members refuse completely to obey the rulings of the presiding officers. It has never happened in the last 20 years. It is not known as acceptable. Even where it happens, stringent actions are taken against those who do it in the world. Incidentally, on the same day, on the 25th of August, where we sought to bring order to the House, in Parliament in Australia, 21 members of the Labour Party were thrown out of the House because they did not obey the rules of the House. Okay? Now, if in our legislation we are empowered to act in the manner in which we acted on the day of the State of the Nation address, it was in order to achieve what ultimately happened, so that the proceedings of the House, with the President addressing the nation, happens, so that beginning today, the debate occurs. So the debate itself would have been undermined completely if the President was not allowed to proceed with his State of the Nation address. We would have difficulty proceeding with a debate that did not occur, because as presiding officers, we did not take responsibility to ensure the public and members of Parliament that they will hear the address and then have something to debate today and tomorrow for the President to reply when he does, when the opportunity comes across. That, Madam Speaker and Chairperson, I thought I should just make those few points.
No, thank you very much, Speaker. Just on one issue, because I think the Deputy Speaker had covered the whole range of things. The question by Thabo. The Northwest gathering, we take it that it was a moment for the African National Congress to reflect and do its business, as that was an elective conference of the ANC. And the national chairperson of the African National Congress in a capacity was then deployed by the NEC to go and give a keynote address. And if you look at that kind of an activity in relation to what we are dealing with here today insofar as what is affecting Parliament, it therefore becomes an issue to say that the African National Congress must then respond to. And therefore it means that the issue does not belong even to this press conference. And it is our view that whatever happened at the provincial conference of the Northwest, it's an issue that even the national leadership of the ANC will then be able to, and in actual fact, request the media to afford the African National Congress to deal with that particular matter. And let's focus on what is it that we are here for, which is to respond to some of the challenges and issues that has concerned you, that has concerned South Africans, and statements that have been made out there in response to what happened last week, and how then do we ensure that we bring about stability within the House and ensure that the democracy that we had fought so much for, and many people, of course, that came before us had sacrificed their lives for, and how then do we ensure that Parliament becomes an institution in which it will respond to the challenges of our people. Thank you very much, Speaker.
There's, I think, presiding officers, there's questions around whether were the presiding officers aware of this scrambling of the cell phones. That's one point that I thought is not covered yet. I'm going to start at the extreme once that question has been addressed. I will start at the extreme because there's quite a lot of hands that side. If I keep this side, it's not going to be fair to my colleagues on the extreme right. I'll come back to you, Caiaphas. I will.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Secretary. I think perhaps I should clarify this issue relating to the separation of powers, but at the same time, the need for preparations towards Sona to be done collectively, given that, to start with, Sona itself, by its nature, is a sitting of the president. It is the president who convenes the joint sitting for the specific item on the agenda for him to deliver the address on the state of the nation. That's, for a start, something that we must understand and internalize. So clearly, we as Parliament, we are the hosts. We are the hosts, but we need to interact with the executive, for instance, the presidency. We need to also deal with issues of security. And those are issues that obviously also reside in the executive. So what we do every year is to identify areas for which the parliamentary administration is adequate in terms of dealing with those issues. For instance, the whole range of invitees and how you determine who is invited and where they come from. I once explained that to members of the media. So there would be those issues of an administrative nature that, in fact, our own parliamentary service under our Secretary to Parliament would deal with adequately. We then came to the issue of a structure that would involve players from Parliament, mainly led by the Secretary, as well as DGs from the relevant organs of state or relevant people, in particular from the security cluster. So that's a structure that has been sitting since December. They've been meeting since December. They have been a collective that was charged with the responsibility of making the inputs, taking into account a range of issues coming, obviously, from the different players, from the different departments, including the department that owns the device. They are part of that structure. Because, I mean, we're looking here at preparing for a State of the Nation event where we will have all three arms present under the same roof. We're going to have people coming from all three spheres within South Africa. It was at the briefing from the relevant structure of last week, Wednesday, where we're being updated, given the latest information and the arrangements, where we became aware that there was a plan for certain equipment to be deployed. And it's an item we received as a report, along with many other reports, without necessarily knowing detail or in particular effects, because it was an item dealing with what measures had to be taken for the protection, in particular, of the head of state and the deputy president. I repeat, the media was not a target, was not mentioned, was never on anybody's mind. Of course, what happened, happened. We sent the secretary. I believe from the secretary, and secretary, I want you to say it with your own words, that we've since received a report, but we believe that the media will still be addressed and they will be able to probe the detail of that report that will come from the owners of the device. I thought I had to explain that. I think other issues have been dealt with, unless, Madam Chair, there's something. Huh?
Chair, sorry.
Can I just take another round of hands? We will come back to yourselves on the matters that you think are not conclusive.
Also those who weren't dealt with.
Okay, can I just start from that side, please? Yes.
Hi, Janet Hurd, Media 24. Madam Speaker, could we just get some clarity in light of what you've just said, but also with regard to the issue of the knowledge beforehand? You're indicating that you were aware that there was some kind of device. Were you aware that the media would, or in fact everybody would not be able to transmit any kind of communication during Sona? Were you aware before? And more important, secondly, just on a personal level, we notified the presiding officers, parliamentary officials, media management, at about 4:30 that there was no signal in the House. That was a lot of time to actually, if it was a technical issue or whatever, to actually unscramble it. So could you just clarify that? Because there was a lot of complaints lodged from 4:30 onwards about the signal, and it seemed a very quick thing to just actually sort out. Thanks.
All right, can I take Paul there, and then Marianne?
Morning,
that
presiding
order.
officers. Paul Vecchiato, Business Day. On the Wednesday, at the media briefing here, Ms. Holtzman, who is head of parliamentary security, sat over that side. And she said to us very clearly, no extraordinary security measures were being put in place. Now, we have detailed information. We've got it from statements from members of the bouncers there in the National Assembly, how they were divided up into teams, combined teams of public order policemen, members of the counter-assault team, and members of parliamentary security, trained together for 2 weeks, coming into the National Assembly, and the chamber, as you know, is the exclusive reserve of the MPs. We saw them lounging around in the chairs down there, even in your chair. They came through, they had photographs of members of parliament from 2 political parties named as their targets, the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters. Is this not a subversion of the Constitution and the National Assembly? And secondly, the use of the jamming device. If you were not aware of it, then surely that is a breach of security, because their jamming device could have been something else. Thank you very much.
All right, can we take Marianne?
Marianne Merton, Independent Newspapers. It's a follow-on from here. Would you please clarify who you refer to by those people? They surely will have a media conference, etc., etc., etc. Because both the police at national level as well as state security agency at national level have referred all queries and inquiries directly to Parliament, clearly indicating that they expect Parliament to make a statement. You clearly have now said that at a briefing Wednesday, you became aware of what, etc., etc. So maybe you could actually explain how it was possible for Parliament to agree as the legislative sphere of government by an intrusion of the executive, aka the security cluster, which has never happened before to this extent as we have seen last week. Particularly, and the Act has been mentioned, and I'd like to refer, as you very well know, Section 11, that the presiding officers are in charge of parliamentary precinct. Section 11 clearly says security services may only enter and perform any functions, policing, etc., etc., under the express permission and authority of the presiding officers. Now, given that this is what the law states, surely the presiding officers, all 4 of you, gentlemen and ladies, sitting here, must have agreed. And it's not good enough to simply pass off that somebody will maybe say something, maybe at some stage. And it's not good enough to say, you know, the way these security people dress, it's their business. The people who moved into the National Assembly were disguised. There were people from the riot police, there were people from the counter-assault team, there were people from the Parliamentary Protection Services. They were disguised. Surely, as the presiding officers of an eminent sphere of state, that must be a concern to you. And surely we are here. We would like to hear your statements on that. And with respect to the NCOP Deputy Chairperson, I hear exactly where you're coming from, and that's fine if that's how you would like to handle the situation. But at the same time, you cannot proclaim that this is a matter for a political party to deal with. And at the same time, use statements that another political party has made outside of the House to attack that political party. There must be an even-handedness.
Marianne,
if you could address that, thank you.
Can we just give other people a chance because there are more questions, please? Right behind Gay, and then Gay the next, and then I'll move to this end. Did I skip you? Oh. Can we get a question?
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. My name is Lukhanya Khalat. I work for the SABC. Ma'am, Madam Speaker, you've said on a few occasions that the media were not the target of the scrambling device. I'd like to know if it wasn't the media, then who was? Who was the target? And just as a follow-up on the question that was asked by Paul, we were told last week that there weren't any special security measures taken for Sona. But obviously in hindsight, and I think you even said so as well, ma'am, that there weren't any special security measures taken. There weren't any special plans that were taken. Now we know there were. If you weren't aware of the plans that were being taken, how then do you allow something like that to happen in your house? Because this is your house, ma'am. If somebody is going to come into your house and just do as they please, how do you allow something like that to happen?
All right, can
Thanks
we
very
take
much.
Gary?
Thanks. I'm largely covered. I'd like to have an answer, please, as to whether the footage that was captured by the cameras in Parliament on Thursday, whether that footage still exists. I know that it did not go out on the feed, but I know that Parliament's got the capacity, the events were still recorded. Has that been reviewed? Will it be reviewed? And most importantly, do you still have it? And is it accessible? And then the other question that I've got relates to what appears to be the bad faith. Why were we lied to as the media of this institution when we were told, not by one but several figures of authority, that there were no extraordinary security measures being taken in preparation for Sona? We all sat here and we heard that and we reported on it. So I think that an essential question that we'd like to have answered as members of the media here today is, how do you go about restoring the relationship? I mean, how do we trust you when what you say? How can we believe you when you say that you weren't responsible for the device? When we have evidence of the wool being pulled over our eyes, we report on matters from here in good faith, on the basis that we're told facts and people are being honest with us. I think it's a serious problem. And then just the other thing is that with reference to the dress of the men who looked like waiters, the Police Act is quite explicit. It says that members of the service have to be identified, have to identify themselves to people. We're living in a time when civilians are being held by the police on the basis that they're foreigners and whose representations aren't being remembered.
Can I just say, I really want to intervene because
but I just make that point about the Police Act, so it's not their own business. It's the people's
let's allow
business.
other
Thanks.
people to also raise questions so that the POs can answer. The lady next to Paul there, I skipped you, and then I'm going to take all the questions because they're all related to one matter. And then the presiding officers will have enough time to answer. Okay? Please go on.
MC Ferrara from SABC. Speaker, could you please tell us which department the device, as you call it, belongs to? And when you said during that sitting that the scrambling issue has been unscrambled, why did you say that? Was there an instruction given from your part, from the part of Parliament, or was that instruction given by the Deputy President, and had you then been briefed that it had been resolved? What was the sequence there?
I take that as an insult.
Okay, can we just finish up the questions around this matter? Andy Siwe and Kaivas, yeah?
Andy Siwe from City Press newspaper. Speaker, the South African National Editors Forum has gone to court around the scrambling of the signal. Will Parliament oppose that legal action, and why, since you admit that there was a device that scrambled the signal? You also say the fact that EFF MPs were on their feet means the naming becomes irrelevant. They all had to be taken out. But now we had ANC members who were also on their feet at the same time, And the NCOP chair, in fact, named one of them, saying, members of the NCOP, take your seats. And he named a member, Dlamini, to take his seat. So why did you deal with members of a certain party when you had members from other parties as well who were on their feet? Okay, I also wanted to know who was the target. You kept saying the device was not targeted at the media. Who was the target and who owns the device? And when you asked the secretary to investigate during the sitting, were you not aware? Because now you're contradicting yourself. You're saying you knew on Wednesday. At the same time, in the House, you said and say you must go and investigate. So will you just clarify us on that? Thank you.
All right, Caiaphas?
Yes, Caiaphas Sona from City Press. On the issue of the device, has it ever been used before? I mean, have you ever received the briefing that the signal will be used in the State of the Nation or in any other sittings of Parliament? And will it be used again? And then number two, sorry, I do not accept Honorable Tau's explanation that you made the remarks in the Northwest. You are ANC and ANC must respond. I'm sorry, you are here, ma'am. You've made the remarks, whether you are ANC or you are chairperson, or you are the speaker, you are chairperson of the ANC. You did make the remark that Malema is a cockroach. The EFF is going to raise it today. We hear that. Can you please respond in your own words what you meant and explain?
The last question from the gentleman here in front of me, and we'll then ask the POs to respond.
Thank you. My name is Baba Londenze from Independent Newspapers. Could you please, if someone could point us to the stated rule or written rule in the joint rules book that deals with points of orders during a State of the Nation address or questions? In the absence of such a rule, which I think is the case, is this perhaps not a good time for the Joint Rules Committee to look into the matter, or the loophole or the lacuna in the rules to prevent maybe a similar State of the Nation address disruption or interruption? And could the Secretary of Parliament please explain to us why the minutes of the State of the Nation address have a number of omissions, or which are key highlights of the actual joint sitting, like the DA walkout and the scrambling matter? Those were omitted completely, because his signature is on those minutes. If he could perhaps explain to us why. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just take somebody behind me? Yes. If it's on the same matter. Is it on the same matter?
Remark.
Okay. The what?
Madam Speaker.
The what? Please say your media house and then...
Okay, sorry. Warren Mavona from The Citizen. Your remark about Malema has been described as potentially dangerous if one considers what happened in Rwanda in 1994. More than 800 Tutsi people were killed by the Hutus. Before they were killed, those people were referred to as cockroaches. So this remark has been put in the Rwandan context. Yesterday, there were people who were injured on the East End, EFF members who were injured allegedly by people who were wearing ANC T-shirts. Now, it has been alleged that that violence was inspired by your remarks. What is your take on that?
From a media house?
Marina Lamprecht from Media 24 Newspapers. In regards to the security team that was on duty on Thursday evening, will we see that team in the House on a regular basis in the future, today, tomorrow, Thursday, when the President is in the House? Will they be on duty in the future? And also, in regards to the cockroach comment, the Centre for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria has called for the Speaker to apologize for this comment. Will she apologize for it?
At this point in time, can I allow the presiding officers to respond? I think we've covered all the questions. And please, colleagues, there are matters that they have to be dealing with. We have exceeded our time. Over to yourselves.
Thank you very much. The legislation that empowers presiding officers, the Powers and Privileges Act, when it defines security police as including police. When we say in the event we recognize that the protection services are unable to do their work, we do so knowing that the security services includes police. In the preparation for Sona, every Sona and so on, we do not ourselves necessarily get into the details of what they will do in every eventuality. What we want assurance from them is that they will be able to handle any situation. And the need for them to exercise, to put a variety of scenarios, is part of their security planning. There is nothing extraordinary about that. This is about good police work, good protection work. Preparation is what makes the difference. In the previous sitting of Parliament, we were unable to proceed with our work because the protection services were unable to get the members who flatly refused to obey the authority of the presiding officers. And as a result, the meeting could not proceed. The House could not proceed. Now, I come from local government, and disaster management is part of our work. Every event, we learn lessons from that stuff. So learning lessons is the business of the net joint, of preparation for eventualities. If one plan did not work, you fall to plan B. There is nothing extraordinary about that. It's applying lessons of the previous practice. So I just want to suggest to you that that is the responsibility of people given the responsibility to carry out protection, to ensure that we are able to carry out the business of Parliament. Now, the constitutional responsibility that presiding officers has to protect this institution and its proceedings lies in the hands of presiding officers and members of Parliament, acting always in the interest of the whole, not only of their own personal, particular political interest. We want debate, we want robust engagement, but according to the requirements of the rules and the requirements. The joint orders say the specific requirements in the joint rules. Let's put it this way. In writing and communicating to the parties concerned, it was explicitly stated this is not an occasion for any other matter. The rule under which the session is convened is explicitly cited by the presiding officer before she calls the president to address the House. That according to rule so and so and so and so, this is what we are requesting the president to address us, and he will produce. That is the legislation that says to us as the House, therefore, today is not question time. So we don't expect question time. Even those points of order, it has to be extraordinary, say, that there's a point of order, some procedural matter, a privilege. Something might be harmful to somewhere else, and so on. Therefore, it has to be entertained. And if it is not none of those, then we cannot entertain it. And when you are asked to stop, and we have provided you with the rules of the House, including of the joint rules, that those are the ones that we use, and so on. But whatever they are, the patience with which they were asked to stop and they did not stop was not for the first time. Okay? It's repeated offense, repeated rejection of authority of the presiding officer undermines the ability of the House to do its work. So no, we do not accept that people must repeatedly do something absolutely wrong and allow it to proceed. The speaker says that we do not get to be told the specifics of this matter, of the operational things that the security will do on the day, because we want assurance that they are ready to be able to do their work and do it effectively. On the same day at 12 o'clock at the Mount Nelson Hotel, the speaker addressed the independent media and articulated the view of the House about the media and its role and the significant role it plays in conducting its work. One of the things since 2009 that the House, which a tradition we continue, is the request of the President that the House must be addressed in the evening so that as many South Africans must be able to hear what he says and so on. And that we have agreed. Not only do we find it useful so that the public, who we say this institution is theirs, are able to have access to that. We can't logically disenable that process, warts and all, from being seen by the public. Our interest is that the proceedings of the House must be seen by the public, and that if there is any glitch that happened, including the jamming thing and so on, could not make sense to our agenda of that nature. That says the President's, what the President says, and the engagement of the President with the House on the day must be beamed to the entire world, and that's our intention. So I just feel that for me, and as far as we are concerned, that is the line that we were taking. We do wish Jan is gone. The remarks that political parties make in the public are available, easily accessible. To ask for the Speaker to list them is ridiculous, really. You didn't do your homework. I haven't seen the minutes of the House, so I'm not able to comment on that. The Secretary will address it, yeah. Okay.
Secretary,
sorry. No, I must answer this one. No. You see, one of the court, SANEF taking Parliament to court, there's a principle here of what some of you have referred to as the separation of powers. One of the useful principles is that each arm of the state must treat each other with the dignity it requires without encroaching on each other's territory. We do have views that oftentimes the judiciary has entered into the area of Parliament running its own affairs. Of course, we know that some of our decisions are reviewable by the Constitutional Court. But in the greater scheme of things, that we should be doing our work in Parliament here appropriately and so on. Unless we obviously have terribly gone against the constitutional provisions. But someone outside of Parliament saying it, including in Parliament, does not make it unconstitutional. So we have to challenge any decision that challenges the activities of Parliament to legitimately run its affairs, so that in the interest of members in the House, that is done correctly. Now, let me put it this way. The members who exception was taken to was when they prevent those authorized to deal with the matters to be taken out. When you prevent them from doing so, I said earlier on that you are acting in the same manner that those who are named are acting. So if the member who was called in the ANC acted that way, she would have been thrown out herself. The deciding matter is that they must disrupt the carrying out of a legitimate functionary work that has been authorized to her by the Speaker. And the Speaker, there was no question about who carried out, who gave instructions. And the Speaker, when she gives instructions, does not give instructions including the specific detail of what it is that must be used to carry out that. The important thing is that we want order in the House. Yes.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker, I'll ask Secretary to just deal with the minutes and then give over to the Chairperson and the Deputy Chair. Thank you.
There is a question that asks why I asked members of the NCOP to sit down and why they were not chucked out. If you had looked at the scene, you will remember that at a particular point, all members of the EFF, including those who are sitting amongst the NCOP members, stood up. And they sit in between members of the NCOP. They then stood up whether to give way to these members of the EFF who were joining their party members, I don't know. The second reason was that as the security forces and the protection service were coming in, some members of the NCOP, where we sit during the joint sittings, is right in the middle of the floor. So we said that they must sit down because at that point they were not participating in what was happening in the benches of the EFF, but they were standing right in the middle of the house. Now, there is a rule in the house that says you cannot walk in a particular instance when we are sitting. And that is why members of parliament are always working on the sides. And that is the reason I told the NCOP members to sit down. The second issue I want to raise, you raised that, in fact, Section 11 of the Powers and Privileges does give us the authority. In fact, it goes further. Abu Sheriff can't even enter the parliament unless we say so. The police who are manning these gates and the doors of parliament are in uniform. They work under the authority of parliament. So again, we should reinterrogate this thing. Does separation of powers actually mean that parliament cannot employ the services of the police? And I'm saying we should look at that. Take the situation in the courts, because if that separation and if that argument that the police should not in any way be seen near the legislative sector, then it shouldn't also be seen in the courts. And yet, it is not like that. I think that we need to get into the broader understanding what the separation of powers means. We were upfront in the House. We did say the security services were employed in support of the parliamentary protection services. I was asking the Honorable Dau, because he's been at the NCOP longer than I have been, to tell me whether the parliamentary protection services actually have a uniform. Now, they are employed together. All we know is that in the preparatory meetings, the police were part of it. At our level, we are not involved in operational issues. We know that there will be instances, because that at least is even predicted by the Act itself, which was there long before some of us became presiding officer. It says in certain instances you may call on the police. So we did expect that we will have police there. The question from the media, which has been persistent, is that in my own sense you seek to say to us, separate the police from the public order. And I think the last time I even asked which one, how do you distinguish them? Because we do not know, some of us. All we know is that there is an agreement in terms of the preparations between the presiding officers of this parliament and the relevant ministers involved in the security cluster to ensure that things go well. We want to reiterate, we do not have any device to scramble. We do not order the use of any device to scramble. And I need to get into this because the Speaker refers to a Wednesday where people say devices. In fact, the word they used was somebody has some machines. Now, we did not get into understanding that, because surely if the understanding was that there was going to be scrambling, we would have wanted to know. And surely even if, I mean, you have no regards for us, you would actually at least give us a little bit of understanding that if we wanted to scramble something, we would not do it, as you say, long before the House sat. We wouldn't do that. In my own thinking, if I wanted to scramble anything, not that I would ever call for that, it would be maybe a particular sin. Why would you do that even before? And therefore, when we said, investigate, Secretary, we were not misleading the media, nor were we misleading the public. We genuinely wanted an investigation done. We are still awaiting that report, and when that report comes, it will be tabled in Parliament because the parties have asked us about this report. I'm saying that, yes, there is anxiety, and we have openly acknowledged that we do not want to see this thing repeat itself in the Parliament of South Africa. We think that democracy means that certain things must happen in particular ways, but it also means that public representatives behave and represent constituencies in the manner in which they are expected. It also means that we come in here. One of the things, the oath says that I will respect and obey the Constitution and all laws. That all law means that there are rules of this institution which all of us have taken an oath to respect. Part of that law is the joint rules, which does not make any provision. So, in the run-up to Sona, you kept on asking us, and some of us kept on saying we are going to stick to the rules because there is no provision made for points of orders. What we thought we would do during that time was, if you say, members, you know the joint rules, you know that no house must bring its business to the joint sitting. We try to say that, don't bring your issues to the joint sitting because we have not been brought here to do so. And I must also say that Sona is called at the instance of the President, as the Speaker says. It is also his agenda. And that is why extraordinary measures will be taken, especially when there have been threats around the head of state or around the state itself. Surely, we have said that we do want to have another look at the rules. And when we said so, late last year and the beginning of this year, the media then ran with a storyline that said we want to make rules for the EFF when we don't. Because there are many other issues which you said must be addressed in terms of the rules. And surely this is one of the areas that we want to take there and look at. But just for emphasis, there is the POA, in full, Oversight Authority. Now, it is a structure, it is not a committee of parliament. It is a structure which comes in, which looks at oversight and the running of parliament. It has party representatives sitting there. It is not open to all members. That structure discussed the matters of August 21, the issues, is it November, that the police were on the floor of parliament. We discussed it. We then said in the first meeting, give us a chance to come back with a fuller report. We came back to the second meeting, and the members of that committee said, we acknowledge that under certain circumstances, the executive authority, the presiding officers, can call on the security forces to come in. So it is not as though this is an extra, suddenly we said then, we said now we want the police. It is there. What we are saying is that we do not want to ever see, somebody asked, is this going to be a normal thing? Will the police frequent the chambers? We don't want to see that happening again. We don't want to see a repeat. We hope that all of us will behave in such a way that we can do what we were brought here to do, to debate, to deal with issues. But when we deal with issues also within the rules that we have all adopted. There is, you are asking us, the scrambling, who was then the target? We couldn't have a target when in effect we had not internalized the fact that one of those machines is going to be a scrambler. Therefore, we couldn't have had. And as I say, if I were in that space, I would not have targeted the media. Why do you do that? You will remember, ladies and gentlemen, that we did have the Committee of Powers and Privileges going through some evidence. And one of the things that was clearly looked at was the footage of what went on in the House. So surely Parliament would not want to say that which we can use as evidence ourselves. If our members and ourselves transgress our own rules, we are going to do away with. And therefore, yes, I think Secretary will respond, but if the cameras of Parliament recorded, then yes, the footage will be there, and no, the footage will not be deleted. What for?
Thank you, Chairperson. Deputy Chair.
No, thank you very much. Just on one issue again, and I want to emphasize this point. Come on, Kefes, no? Yeah. The issue, and I'll maintain that line of argument or response, to say the national chairperson of the African National Congress addressed a conference of the ANC. And therefore, what happened at the conference of the ANC should not be brought to Parliament as an issue that needs to be debated or whatsoever, but rather afford the African National Congress an opportunity to deal with this matter. If there are any questions in relation to that, those questions must be forwarded to the African National Congress. And I'm raising this thing interestingly, and I hear what Kefas is saying, that he does not agree with me. And you see now, if you say you don't agree with me, it doesn't mean that I would agree with you. Therefore, I'll disagree with you as well. And we end up, therefore, being in a debate, meaning, therefore, you've got an opinion on the matter. And this is a press conference. We do not want to reduce it to a point in which, as journalists and presiding officers, we'll be debating now what we think it is correct and what we think is not correct. And I think it will be unfair, really, to put it to me and say, I disagree with you, because I would not also agree with you. And I'm raising this against the backdrop of, for a very long time, we have seen a view to a great extent that has been raised even in Parliament, where you would find that when it is opportunistic, the Speaker would be referred to as somebody who takes a mandate from Luthuli House, and therefore she must not come to Parliament with a mandate from Luthuli House. Now Luthuli House has deployed her to the northwest to go and do matters that Luthuli House thinks are important to Luthuli House. Now those matters have been brought now to Parliament. The mandate of Luthuli is brought now to Parliament.
With all due respect, this is not, we're not fighting. With all due respect, can the Speaker answer, not you?
No, this is a press conference. You see now. Yes, this is.
Quite poignantly, all of us, and keep the decency of this meeting. Please, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary, because I thought that this is a press conference of the presiding officers. And therefore, as a collective, we are dealing with issues as they are put to us. And it is for that matter that I want to conclude this issue by re-emphasizing the fact that organizational matters that are outside of Parliament, let them be treated as such. And allow us to deal with matters that we think are internal parliamentary issues that seeks to strengthen the role of Parliament in ensuring that we improve the lives of ordinary South Africans. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. The chairperson wants to come back on a particular point. I'll allow her to.
We've been asked to comment on what our position is if media is taking the matter to court of the scrambling. Of course, we can't say South Africans in the different sections of the society have no right. You will remember that, in fact, a lot of the legislation has been challenged, so it's fine. It can go to court. There's no way Parliament will say you have no right to oversight us or to show us the hitches in the law. Just as there is also a view that says perhaps the Powers and Privileges Act must be relooked at too. Again, the courts are there to interpret and to sometimes help us if we are not doing what the law was intended to do. So South Africans are free to do that. You've also asked us in this press conference whether the Speaker, in her capacity as the chairperson of the ANC, will apologize for using the word cockroach. We really feel that that matter is best left to the Speaker to deal with. And it is unfortunate that it is coming to us in this press conference, but I think at the right time, she will deal with the matter. Thank you.
Okay, the last point is just to, from the Secretary to Parliament, and that will signify the end of the media briefing, and I wish to thank you all for attending, but he's going to respond to that matter.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary. On the issue of the minutes, normally minutes are written in a very brief form. And as you would know, minutes are supplemented by a Hansard, which captures the actual record, as it happens. So we have the Hansard in that regard, which captures the actual record as it happened. Now, in terms of walkouts, they have not normally been captured in the minutes before, if you go through our records and look at that. But since the issue has been raised, we will look at it, but what we want to say very clearly, you have a Hansard which captures what has happened, in terms of the proceedings, which is a normal legal process that is allowed for in terms of parliamentary processes and procedure. So the way we have captured the minutes in this particular instance is a standard process, and it's a legitimate process that is accepted. There is no any untoward reason for that whatsoever, because those matters are there.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Over to you, Speaker.
Thanks, Deputy Secretary. Just two things briefly. One, if we were to set a precedent to bring issues of political engagement out there into Parliament, we would never start to attend to the business that Parliament exists for. So I firmly repeat what the other POs have said, and that is that issues that belong to the space of our political involvement in South Africa must remain there, because all of us in the chamber, in both houses, are political beings. We are brought here by our political parties. We act out there as political animals, and that remains that there in that space. The second thing is that I know you are very impatient, but you will soon know that it's a department of state that owned the device, they are going to address the media. I'm not their spokesperson. Secretary assures me that there is a report from them. I haven't seen it, but I will look at it. And I really also hope that they will soon be coming out on these matters. On the whole, we are open to suggestions, we are open to advice, but in general, I don't think it bodes well for South Africans from different sectors to be attacking each other. We have a role to play to protect our democracy. And we are determined to play that role according to the rules, according to the law, according to the constitution that our people fought and died for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the presiding officers for giving us more time than we expected. This is the end of the media briefing. Thanks, colleagues, for your attendance.
That was the National Assembly Speaker, Baleka Mbete, who says that South Africa's parliament does not own a jamming signal or a jamming device. And of course, that was the press conference held to clarify some of the issues there. It's right now, it's just